just met Mike Collett, and you'll also meet Jenny Collett, who's joining me to do some of the discussions and some of the examples that we're going to be sharing with you today. And they've both been involved in writing all the materials for this webinar series, so they have a huge amount of experience between them about this topic and these webinars. And Mike is also going to be there in the background doing all the technical stuff so that I don't kind of go all fingers and thumbs about things. So if you've got any technical issues, drop that into the chat box and Mike will pick them up for you. And any questions or queries, Jenny will answer those as well in text chat. And you know, most of us really are familiar with Zoom now. It's kind of become second nature to be on a Zoom. But if you haven't found it before, you've not used it before, there is the chat box on screen, which you can drop messages into. And we know that some people have had problems recently because of bandwidth issues. Hopefully that's resolving a little bit now that we're you know, shifting back to a slightly more blended way of working. But any problems, do let us know in that chat box. And this webinar is one of a series of 6 webinars, and plus we've got 4 training webinars as well, which are about embedding maths and English into apprenticeships. And this one is focusing on definitions, mapping, and employer-provider collaboration. So this is the kind of bedrock of all of the webinars that we're doing. Obviously, we're aware of our unique situation and how challenging it's been to shift apprenticeship learning to the new ways of working. So I'm hoping that everybody's okay and managing to stay safe and well. And, you know, whether you're working from home or in the office sometimes or whatever it is, you know, we've all adjusted in some way or another. And all I have to say is my cat is really bored with me now. He is so fed up with me being at home. So, you know, if you hear a protest in the background, that will be Rodney, because he's not happy that his, you know, quiet life has been invaded by me working from home. So however you're working, we're going to try and discuss embedding within that climate of home working and online learning, as well as bearing in mind that some apprentices are back in their workplaces. They've had impacts on the way they're working, and we've had impacts in the way we're working with our apprentices. And we're not going to cover those wider digital issues here, although we know there are a lot of them. We're going to signpost you to materials to help you cover that, and we'll do that as we go through and towards the end. And we're going to be encouraging you to think about how you could work together with others to embed maths and English in the workplace in ways that really benefit apprentices. And what we've done all the way through these webinars is we've been collecting examples of good practice, which you can drop into the text chat at any point. And we share those during the webinar because we're sharing them in the chat, but also we collect them and share them after the webinar. And a lot of people have found those really useful. Now, you're not going to be able to speak in the group just because there's too many of us in the webinar today, and you get the joy of not having to look at us as well. But you can drop things into text chat, and there are a few quick response buttons, and we'll do some polls as we go along. But just be aware, obviously, everyone can see what you drop into the chat box. So just be careful. If you don't want to share anything, don't drop it in the chat. And then after the webinar, we'll send you some more information, and that will include links to the slides. So all the slides you see today, you will get those. So you don't have to write loads of things down, and you'll also get all the links to everything we're talking about today. So when we're sharing resources, you'll get to see them. So today, we're going to cover ideas for embedding maths and English into authentic workplace practice. And we're also going to discuss how to enhance provider-employer relationships and communication. Now, this is particularly important during our current situation with, you know, some people at home, some people at work, some people doing a combination of both, as we all need to work harder at maintaining those effective channels of communication, particularly when people are feeling uncertain about the future. And, you know, we've all seen what's been going on in many jobs, you know, kind of either furloughed or not clear whether there's going to be work in the future, how that work's going to pan out, where it's going to be. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and communication between providers, employers, and apprentices is absolutely critical. And the focus here is on achieving level 2 maths and English for apprenticeships, but that's also useful in other learning situations because of the mandatory requirements. And some of you may know about these, but we're just going to flag them up for you. On screen, there are lots of links for you to have a look at, particularly as there's been a lot of updates around this. And the mandatory requirements are there where apprentices must achieve a level 1 in both English and maths functional skills qualifications to complete their apprenticeship. They're also required to study towards and attempt the functional skills assessment at level 2, but not necessarily pass it. And that's for your level 2 apprenticeships. And for anybody taking a level 3 or higher, they're still required to hold or achieve an approved level 2 functional skills English and maths qualification before they can successfully complete their apprenticeship. So those are the kind of basic rules of the mandatory requirements. But because of COVID-19, there are EPA flexibilities. And that situation is changing all the time. So please do check the updates. That's why we've put them on screen for you. And we literally go online and we check before we go on. We haven't seen any new updates today. So we think this is the current situation. And just be aware, if you're working in Wales, that there are slightly different rules and regulations. So please do check the link for that info. Hopefully that makes sense. If you've not come up against the mandatory requirements before, please do, after this webinar, click on those links and check them. Also, there's changes to the funding requirements as well, because we've moved from last year, from the 1st of August 2020, all new apprentices must start on apprenticeship standards, and all references to frameworks have been removed. So there have been changes in the over the last year, but particularly over the last 6 months. So regardless of all of that, all apprentices, including those that have achieved the required qualifications, should still be supported to develop maths and English skills relevant to and at the level of the demands of their vocational tasks. That makes huge amount of sense to me, because you want your apprentices to be working at an equal level, their vocational skills and their maths and English skills, so they dovetail together. There's no point people having fantastically good vocational skills if they don't have the maths and English skills to match. So all apprentices should be able to work at the same level of English and maths as their apprenticeship, and they should be encouraged to keep developing those maths and English skills relevant to their vocational choices. So this is about kind of that ongoing lifelong learning culture of keep going with your learning. Don't just because you've ticked a box, don't stop there. Keep learning about the maths and English that's really going to help you grow in your vocational choice. And while people are working from home, you may find that it's a good time to focus on maths and English elements, because it just might be easier to teach them remotely using online techniques. Don't know. Some people might think that, some people might not. If you've got any thoughts about that, we'd be really interested to see them in chat. So if you think it's easier to teach maths and English while people are working at home, drop that into the chat and tell us about it. Or if you think it's really tough and you're struggling with it, again, drop that into chat, because some people might have some good ideas to help you out here. So I've kind of thrown the word embedding around a bit there. So we're just going to have a look at what embedding means. The term embedding is used to describe naturally occurring opportunities for maths and English in the apprentice's workplace, and this includes working from home. Embedding is not trying to shoehorn the maths and English into other programs of study. There is no prescriptive approach to how maths and English are covered for apprentices, and embedding may not be appropriate as an approach for every aspect of maths and English subject content. You know, sometimes it's just not going to be a naturally occurring opportunity to teach that specific element, so don't try to make it fit. And with the current situation, there may be some elements that need to wait until the apprentice is back in the workplace to be able to do this most effectively. So this is about professional judgment as to, you know, what works well and in what situation. And although they can overlap, there are some different approaches to making maths and English real for apprentices, with embedding being the preferred option, but there are 4 approaches that we're just going to describe for you now. The 4 approaches are separating, contextualizing, embedding, and integrating. So those are the 4 approaches. And what I mean by separating is, separating means a maths or English subject specialist delivers the subject away from the vocational subject. So an example would be teaching multiplication of fractions with no vocational context to a mixed group of learners in a college. I tend to think of that as the traditional way of working. It was certainly the way I was taught. So that's separating. Contextualizing then, contextualizing may have a qualification, such as functional skills as the main driver, but this is taught using workplace topics. An example of that would be calculating area in the context of decorating, which could be taught in a classroom setting. However, it's only relevant if these are apprentices undertaking painting and decorating. So it's in the context, it's contextualized. So then embedding, that means using workplace situations to learn maths and English. For example, you could use company manuals and ask the apprentice to demonstrate that they understand and are able to use technical information. So you are applying skills and knowledge to real documents and activities. That is, the fact it's real, the fact it's helping them apply their learning is the critical part of embedding there. And then there's integrating, which combines contextualizing and embedding. And this happens when some maths and English can be embedded, but the workplace skills need to be expanded to meet the full range of maths and English skills required to address the qualification. And that's what I meant by don't shoehorn it in, don't shove it in if it's not going to fit. If there are no naturally occurring opportunities for embedding, then try contextualizing instead. That tends to work really well if you can do it that way. And not all topics can be easily embedded and may need separate skills development. And this is going to vary according to the vocational areas. And you may well have examples of this where some vocational areas, it's much easier to do this than others. So we're now going to do a quick vote using good old Zoom. There's a statement up on screen that I'm going to get you to vote on. And the statement is, vocational specialists understand how to work with the naturally occurring maths and English. Okay, that's the statement. Vocational specialists understand how to work with the naturally occurring maths and English. Do you agree with that or not? So give us a yes or no, and you can do, you can do the thumbs up or you can type yes and no into the chat box, whichever works for you. So if you agree, give us a yes or a thumbs up. If you disagree, give us a no or a, no or a thumbs down. So give us a yes or a no as to whether you agree with that statement or not. And this is where Mike has to do some quick adding up for me, because Mike does numbers way faster than I do. So Mike's doing the okay. Oh, there's quite a lot of no's coming in. Interesting. Okay, a few more votes to come in. Keep going. Oh, I like it. Totally depends on the teacher. Nice one, Nicola. Yeah, absolutely. Any more votes? Any more votes? Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Few more. I'll give you another couple of seconds to give us a vote, yes or no. I'm pretty sure it looks like a resounding no actually today. Okay, James, we're going with a maybe. Okay, so it looks like a no. Tell me if I'm wrong, Mike, but it looks like a, oh, thank you, Mike. So it was pretty much no. Okay, so a lot of people are saying no, and there were a few, it depends. I know, we're being a bit mean there. And it's interesting that sometimes this varies a little bit when we do this activity, but more often than not, people are saying no. And I think that may be because vocational teams aren't confident with identifying maths and English, or they may be more focused on the vocational elements. And sometimes vocational teams need specific CPD or shadowing activities to support them with developing their skills and confidence. So this might be something to consider in terms of building up resilience and capacity in delivery teams. And, you know, I'm quite old. When I first did this work, yeah, gosh, blimey, 15 plus years ago, this was something we had a real problem with. So we did a lot of work with our vocational specialists to try and get them the confidence and actually just the language sometimes for doing this part of the job. So it is something you do need to work on. So thank you for flagging that up. Mike's put in approximately. Thank you for flagging that up, that, you know, that no seems to be the answer on this one. And if you've got any particular reflections on that, please do drop that into the chat, because I think this is a changing agenda, and sometimes people are saying that actually it depends whether it's maths or English as well, because that can have an impact on whether people are confident or not, based on their own skills quite often. Thank you. So I'm going to go on to show you an example of embedding. And this comes from the online module, which you can access if you would like to kind of develop your understanding further. And this is one of the ideas for embedding that's shared in that module. And it talks about Chen. And Chen is a healthcare support worker and discussing a report on health inequality by region with his colleagues. And to be honest, this is a great one for the current situation, because as we know, there are health inequalities across regions, and all sorts of interesting cuts of the data here if you're interested in doing something like this with learners. So there are opportunities to embed maths, and that in this example was to compare the life expectancy of different areas and between richest and poorest. There were also opportunities to embed English, and that was around to critically analyse the report findings. And I think this one is a really good one, because very naturally those two things sit together. Looking at a report, you can look at both the maths and the English in one single document. So if you've got any examples, please do drop those into chat. And just to note, this is an example that could work just as well online as in the workplace, because we're all, you know, using Zoom and Skype and Teams and whatever much more fluently now. You might actually be able to join in on work activities that are either taking place remotely or in the workplace via this medium now that we have available to us. So you could be supporting your apprentices in a very kind of different way, but remotely. So if you've got any other ideas, drop them into the chat for us. And I'm just going to now bring Jenny in, because I know you've got some examples from some different settings that you wanted to share, Jenny.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm going to give you a couple of little anecdotes which I think are very relevant to what Bev's been saying so far. It seems a long time ago, but just before lockdown, I was working in a distribution centre, kind of warehouse, teaching functional skills English to workers in the factory there. And in relation to the approaches Bev's just described, I think what I used most of the time was an integrating approach, which combined embedding and contextualizing. So what I did was I created embedding learning materials from the factory's own paperwork, using all kinds of documentation from the workplace, such as their marketing material, health and safety rules, accident report forms, all sorts of things which I could adapt and which was relevant to their work. And I could then use these to create free writing, form filling, comprehensions, gap filling, spelling and grammar, and all sorts of things. The nice thing about all of this was that people like the vocational staff, the health and safety officer, the HR person, the marketing staff, they became involved in what I was doing in embedding. And they used to source lots of workplace materials for me to use in this setting. Now, from my experience, once these people knew what my approach was, They developed an interest in what I was doing and kept bringing me things that I could embed into lessons. And it was also good for the apprentices to see that staff were interested and involved in what they were doing. It made what they were doing authentic because they were applying their skills and knowledge to real documents. Where the kind of different approach was when I had to teach something like perhaps punctuation or grammar, and I needed to just teach that separately. As Bev says, you can't shoehorn everything in. So that's one example. Another example is when I was putting together the content for some of these webinars, I thought it would be nice for all of you to have access to some case studies, because it's always nice to learn from other people's experience of embedding. And this is a case study from Gloucestershire County Council from somebody called Becky Allen, who works in the Adult Education Service as the apprenticeship coordinator. She manages a team of assessors, but also directly supports apprentices. Her current focus is on addressing the requirements of the reformed functional skills qualifications. So she was asked, she attended some of these webinars that we've been delivering, and she asked to give some tips. This is what she said in the case study. There's so much to cover with apprenticeships, it can be hard to focus on embedding. My tip is that you need to get to know your apprentices and the workplace they're in. Then you can relate maths and English to the workplace. With maths, it's also about visualization. For example, with fractions, if you talk about dividing up a cake for X number of people and allocating portions, then ask them how they would write this down. They understand it better. She says she's had NHS apprentices say to me, "Oh, I find English so hard." And I say, well, you just think about the medical language you use on a daily basis. And then they realize they understand more than they think they do. She says that the good thing about functional skills is that it's about life. Now, the longer version of this and other relevant case studies can be found on the ETF website. So you will get that link at the end. Mike will send that to you at the end of the webinar. Okay, thanks. Back to you, Bev.
Thank you, Jenny. It feels like I just had that moment of the BBC, back to you in the studio there. So strange working in this way. Right, we're now going to look at a concept called mapping. In fact, Jenny and I met many years ago on training for mapping. And this is one of the things I come back to time and again, because I find it such a useful concept. And mapping means looking for naturally occurring opportunities to teach maths and English in the workplace and showing how it links back to the qualification. This helps both the apprentice and their employers to understand the relevance and importance of these skills within the vocational competence. So you can teach maths and English by teaching to the criterion or by allowing the task to lead the learning. So on screen now, we've got that kind of two different approaches. On the left, you've got the criterion led, and on the right, you've got the task led. So on the left, it shows you, this is content from the functional skills maths level 2. So one of those elements there is read, write, order, and compare positive and negative numbers of any size. So you would look at that and you'd go, okay, what task can I design that would meet that? That's when you go from the criterion to the task. On the other side, where it's task-led, you're looking at the task, the vocational task, and seeing when and where it meets the criterion. So as you're working with the apprentice, you go, oh, hang on a minute, what you've just done there, right? I think that gives me the evidence for read, write, order, and compare positive and negative numbers of any size. So you go from the task that's in front of you. So that is seen time and again as the most effective way to map the learning, because you're going from the task rather than the criterion. It takes a little time, I think, to get used to doing this, but actually once it clicks, it makes so much sense and makes life so much easier when you're kind of planning the learning and assessment. And if you look at the workplace task first and see what criterion it meets, it's also more authentic for the learner and for the employer, because it's going from what they know rather than going, here, look at the criteria and let's see what we can do to meet that. It's going, no, what do you normally do? Let's go from there. Jenny, was there anything you wanted to add into that one as well?
Yes, it's another case study from the ETF website from somebody called Kate Woolley, who is a teaching and learning coordinator at a family-owned training company based in Harrogate. They offer apprenticeships and other qualifications in a wide range of areas, from childcare and teaching assistant to leadership and management. So her role involves supporting learning in the workplace for childcare qualifications from level 2 to 5. She's a former nursery manager, so she knows all about working in the actual vocational setting. So she describes how attending one of our webinars has changed her thinking. She says it's making sure that maths and English is not just an add-on. When you're doing your lesson plans, it's important to get away from the idea of, now we're going to do a bit of maths and English. So for our childcare courses, we're now building in questions that relate to staff-student ratios, floor space ratios, to ensure they do the maths. So this is the task-led approach that Bev's just been describing. She says it also made me realize that you cannot embed everything, which is what I was talking about earlier. Sometimes you do have to say, right, we're going to work on this math skill. So it depends on the course. She feels that English is easier to incorporate in a childcare course, for example, because there's a lot of written work, whereas in a subject like engineering, there's a lot more maths. So she says that the whole webinar training package has helped her think through how to embed maths and English appropriately. And again, we'll send you the link to that case study at the end of the webinar. Thanks.
Thank you, Jenny. I want to move us on now to something else that's really vital in apprenticeships, and that's the role of teachers and mentors, because they're really vital in helping the apprentices to recognise where they're using maths and English in their workplace setting. And the reason that that's important is because it's easier to engage with maths and English if you understand the reasons it's important to your work. There is, if you're into theory, there's a lot of theory around this, and it actually probably goes back to Fordist principles if you're as sad as me and you did that bit of social history. It just makes so much more sense to people if they know why they're doing something and how it can help them to do what they want to do. So mentors and teachers can really encourage apprentices to see how to transfer that one piece of learning to different situations, and that will make them much more resilient as learners, or when their jobs change or they have to take on a new role. It also helps employers to see how important maths and English are within an apprenticeship, because if they can recognise where their employees are using these skills and how this is contributing to a more skilled and resilient workforce, then they're going to be able to buy into the maths and English much more readily. And we've certainly seen in the current situation that apprentices who are more resilient in terms of their maths and English and digital skills have been much more able to switch to new ways of learning and working. And to be honest, a lot of people were homeschooling their kids, and that's a really good opportunity to discuss the importance of maths and English skills with apprentices, because suddenly they're being presented with, well, how do you do your quadratic equation or whatever it is that your child is presenting you with? So we've seen that actually the shift to online working has really tested a lot of people's maths and English skills. So where they are able to acknowledge that, it can really help them to think, perhaps I need to brush up on this, or actually now I see it's important that I do the maths and English for my vocational learning as well as for myself. So it's been interesting. There's definitely been some shifts in ways of thinking. But I just want to do a quick reality check, because that darn thing called reality gets in the way, doesn't it? It's just not always easy to embed maths and English. So we're just going to have a look at some challenges for a moment. And we're going to do another poll, which is up on screen now. And we've picked a few challenges that we know people have had because they've been flagged up to us. And what we want you to do is have a look at those challenges that are up on screen and pick the main challenge for you. So I'm going to read them out for you so you just know what's in the box. So we've got time, insufficient time to work with lesson plans and schemes of work to embed the skills effectively. Resources, lack of resources such as rooms, equipment, books, previous tests. Training, lack of staff development for embedding. Skills, lack of expertise in teaching maths and English. Support, lack of support from management in making time to do embedding. Employers, lack of employer engagement. Okay, so click on the most significant challenge for you. Okay, so give us your votes on the most significant challenge for you. So go for it. And I really would have, we should have had some music or some kind of, I don't know, racehorses on screen or something showing us, you know, which one of these was winning. Because at the moment, we've got a bit of a neck and neck going on here between two of them. They're just going up and down, very, very close. Oh, yeah, keep voting, keep voting. Any more votes? Any more votes? Give you another few seconds. Go on, click on your top one. Oh, sorry, we seem to have, Mike, we seem to have annotation switched on. I don't know if you can switch that off because otherwise we're going to get drawings. Okay, any more votes? Otherwise we will close it down because, oh, okay. All right, we'll stop there. So, time is our challenge. Time is our challenge. I am a bit of a Doctor Who fan, and I would love to say that I could give you some of that wibbly wobbly timey wimey to sort this out, but it's a huge problem for people. I do recognize that. So yeah, I'm going to bring Jenny back in a moment to talk about this. And it's interesting that skills, lack of expertise in teaching maths has come up, because that has come up quite frequently as a significant challenge for people. And, you know, certainly since I've been working in the sector, this has been something that's come around time and again, is trying to find great maths teachers, basically, or people who are confident enough to teach maths, particularly in an embedded way. Jenny, do you want to come back in and talk about some of your experiences here?
Yes, I'm just going to go through some tips for which we're going to send to you in relation to time management. But just to let you know that we are going to talk a bit later on employer engagement, which I know it came down low, but it's still quite important. And also the lack of expertise in teaching maths. Towards the end of the webinar, we're going to give you some resources that are on the Excellence Gateway. And there are lots of things now there that people who aren't very confident in teaching maths, they can do courses, they can self-assess themselves, all sorts of things. So it can be worked on, that particular issue, for people who aren't very confident or don't have the expertise. I know I couldn't teach maths, but it's not easy. Anyhow, I'm going to focus now on time management. It's not easy. We can't wave a magic wand and create time, but we do think it's important. So just as an organization, wherever you work, think about how you use the time you've got, for example, in existing meetings. Do you always do admin in meetings when it actually could be done online? Could the agenda be changed to share ideas about embedding, look at resources, providing peer support for lesson plans and sharing best practice? You know, little things like that, just finding, say, 15 minutes in a staff meeting to just share and help each other with this. Could staff take more ownership of staff meetings? You know, if it becomes a priority for you in terms of planning and delivery, then you will find time. If it's not a priority, you won't be able to find or manage the time. So also talk to your apprentices as well and involve them and other staff at in the employer venues to see how they can have ideas for embedding as well. And one idea, if you've got want to create time, and I know this is eating into people's free time, but you can create things like embedding drop-in workshops in the lunch hour or after work for sharing resources and ideas, perhaps with some cake, I don't know. Okay, over to you, Bev.
Thank you, Jenny. Sorry, trying to do two things at once there. Forgot to unmute myself. It is, some of these challenges are exactly that, challenges, and we are trying to work in difficult situations. So what's really helpful is if you do have any of these challenges, but you also have some brilliant ideas, please share them with each other, because that is the only way we're going to save ourselves a lot of time, basically. I want to point you towards some resources here. And this one on screen at the moment is the Improving the Delivery of Maths and English in Apprenticeships. And it's part of an ETF guide, and all of the ETF materials are bespoke for the sector. They have been designed for the sector and they're free to the sector. So there's a lot of stuff here, particularly on the Excellence Gateway. You'll find loads of material. And this one includes a lot of links to other resources, such as a series of case studies and a performance and quality management toolkit. And that's got even more resources in it. So do have a look. And the case studies we've mentioned are in there. So we're going to show you the Plumpton case study now, because that's particularly relevant to embedding maths and English. And this case study is part of the OTLA project, which there's 2 open access case studies published on this link. So do click on it and have have a look. It's got maths and English infographics, as you can see on the screen now, and you might be able to kind of see how they could be useful in terms of 3 areas. They're written in 3 ways: apprentices, employers, and practitioners. So on screen at the moment, you can see that there's this do and don't set of cards almost. So how numeracy works for employers, do and don't. And these can be really useful as resources for workshops, for discussions, for team meetings. And they can really help frame thinking. So you could work with an employer, or you could work with an apprentice, or you could work with a delivery team using these do's and don'ts to stimulate conversation. So have a look at them. They are a really useful resource. And moving on from that, we're going to have a look at a bit of animation that gives you some ideas for how providers and employers can work together. And while you're watching it, see if you've got any other ideas that you'd be able to share. So this is about providers and employers working together.
A very important aspect of successful embedding is to build the relationship between the employer and the provider. Ajay is a warehouse manager. He's meeting Ashley and Tom, who are maths and English teachers at the local college.
Thanks for coming to see us at the warehouse.
Thanks for the invite. We need to know more about it so that we can link teaching to what you do here. Your apprentices will then see the relevance of improving their maths and English skills.
Come on, let's tour the warehouse. You can meet the apprentices. After, we'll go back to my office to discuss working together.
Let's meet often to chat about planning and delivery, and about support for those with learning needs.
That sounds great. And yeah, we need to think about inclusivity too. What about regular online meetings? We can check progress and make sure my apprentices are getting the support they need. I'll get one of my supervisors to monitor progress with you.
Of course, come to the college one day. You can observe some maths and English lessons. First, I can do a training session for your supervisors. We can help them with the functional skills standards and map them to what you're doing here.
Sure, I'll make time for my vocational staff to work with you. We can share planning so everyone knows what's going on.
Spot on. Hopefully your supervisors will get more confident with their own maths and English.
All of this sounds very good. It means our apprentices will get great support with their maths and English.
If this kind of successful partnership way of working can be established between employers and providers, everyone, in particular the apprentices, will benefit. And don't forget, examples of cross-collaboration and learning that is authentic and realistic in maths and English is important and supports apprentices with their employability skills. Ofsted inspectors will also look out for these features during an inspection.
So it's interesting, isn't it, that there's some quite interesting ideas in there, and obviously we often link back to Ofsted, but I think that's sort of the least important bit in there. I don't know if you've got any other examples that you would drop in about working together, but inclusion was a really important one for me, to make sure that, you know, people do feel included in the learning. And we're going to go on now to look at a poll about this employer-provider collaboration, to see what's actually already taking place, and what you're actually doing at the moment, because I think what we've noticed over this last year is a significant shift in the way employers and providers are working together in a really positive way. So on screen now are some choices about collaboration that's currently happening, and you can click on as many of these as you're already doing. So the choices are: work together on timetabling, share responsibility for initial assessments and reviewing progress in ILPs, give Maths and English staff time to familiarise themselves with the vocational area, have a liaison person for Maths and English, have regular shared planning sessions, including reviews on the progress of individual learners, observe each other's sessions. So these are some that we pulled out as examples of collaboration. Please click on as many of them as you're already doing. And if you've got any others that are utterly brilliant and we've completely missed, please drop those into the chat for us. Because there are some really interesting things happening now that we've had to sort of shift our ways of working. So click on as many as you're already doing. Some really interesting numbers coming up there. And it'll be interesting to see if they're different to the ones we've had in the past, because things are certainly changing in the way we're working. So yeah, we've got a couple that are pretty close, pretty neck and neck here. And actually quite linked, I think, the two that are coming out top. So if you have clicked on the something else, please do drop that into chat, because that's really helpful for us to know what else you're doing. Any other votes coming in, folks? And I know some people have problems voting if they're working off phones or iPads and things. So apologies if you can't actually access some of this. Any other votes? Any other votes? Click away, otherwise we will close the poll. Okay, 5 more seconds and we will close the poll, as I think you're pretty much there. Okay, we'll end the poll there. And the one that's out front, but not by a huge amount, is have regular shared planning sessions, including reviews on the progress of individual learners. That is a great one, really great one that lots of you have clicked on. That was not what was coming out top when we first did these programs. So I think things are shifting, possibly because of our way of working. And then the shared responsibility for initial assessments and reviewing progress in apprentices' learner plans. Those two, I think, are pretty linked. So that's great that those two are coming out top as the ways that you're collaborating. I just want to kind of bring Jenny back in again, because I think you had some slightly different examples or comments on that.
Yes, I just wanted to focus on the one that didn't score very well, which was giving Maths and English staff time to familiarise themselves with the vocational area. It's quite common for people to be, we talked about time earlier, about people being too busy. But if the concept of embedding and understanding Maths and English and its relevance to the vocational subject is new to you or your organisation, and the staff feel that they don't have any relevant experience, you could try creating some pilots. I know you're going to say, well, there isn't any money or there isn't any time, but try and find some time, because I've worked with organizations where instead of trying to get everybody to do everything all at once, we've created a short pilot where provider staff, vocational staff, and employers have a period of intensive development of an approach which works for them for embedding. Now, this has, in my experience of working like this, creates good examples of good practice and ideas, which then can be cascaded to other vocational areas. I've tried it in a college, I've tried it in a private training provider, and it's worked really well. So have a little think about that, whether you just want to focus on one little group of people working together to see how this can work, and then sharing that experience with other people. Thanks, Bev.
Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, I think the thing that always comes back to me is communication, and providers and employers needing to maintain their relationships, particularly at the moment, because they need to be supporting apprentices who are able to continue with their learning. So it's kind of keeping in touch about what's working and what's not. Now, obviously, it's not possible for everyone, but where you can, you should be discussing revised individual learning plans and identifying appropriate ways of supporting learning online. And if you're delivering apprenticeships, your expertise in online learning could be really helpful to employers who've had to move to remote ways of working. So it could be a bit of a skill share going on here. And talking about that, we've all learned some new digital skills recently. Blimey, I've been challenged is all I have to say. And what we've got up on screen now is a really great resource to help you work online. And ETF have pulled this together, the Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform, a guide to EdTech and essential digital skills training for remote working. Really good. Clickable link on screen. And what we're going to do is just show you a little part of that module, and this is looks at the process of creating resources that are shareable, and behind this is the concept of collaborative creation and reaching out to practitioners in other organizations. So have a think about how you might apply this for your apprentices and how it could support employer provider collaboration.
Group learning activities online provide learners with flexible and personalised opportunities to develop their understanding. They can also be adapted for different contexts and groups. At their core is communication between players, a conversational transaction that can be reworded, and a learning process around subject-specific content and media that can be repurposed for other subjects. Gary teaches adults English language at a community centre. He uploads course presentations and materials to a VLE to support learning. He includes extension materials such as practice exam papers and online quizzes. A strategy day with colleagues flags up the need for something more interactive and conversational that will allow the learners to work with their peers. Gary proposes using Yammer as a collaborative space for learners to develop their writing skills. He sets up a dedicated group on Yammer, adding his learners to it and embedding the group into the familiar VLE to minimise access issues. He then creates an exercise about writing articles on topics that have come up in class. They need to follow the instructions and work together to write an article and agree on the final piece for submission. The generic nature of this collaborative learning activity makes it easy for Gary to share with his colleagues. Julia. Gary's colleague Julia teaches ICT at the centre. She wants to create a dynamic online resource on the topic of computer hardware components. A blog she follows leads her to H5P, which is a free online tool that allows you to create interactive activities with little technical skill. She includes subject-specific content in bite-sized chunks and adds some drag-and-drop and hotspot activities to make it interactive and to allow learners to check their own understanding. Whilst the content of her resource is subject-specific, Julia sees that it could be easily adapted by others. She enables a download button so that colleagues can take a copy of what she had created as a template and adapt it to their own subject matter. Gary and Julia arrange a meeting with their strategy group to demonstrate their new practice. They make their templates and instructions available and help colleagues get started. Julia downloads the H5P activity and places the file on a staff good practice SharePoint site, showing tutors how to create their own H5P account and upload and edit her work to meet their own subject needs. Critically, they share the enthusiastic learner feedback from the writing project and evidence of improved test scores from the ICT students. Sharing is more likely to lead to adoption if the innovation is easy to carry out, you can show successful outcomes, and you can help resolve problems yourself or through a group or forum.
I think that one I find really useful in that last summary, easy, successful, and help, because I can be pretty resistant when somebody says to me, oh, you've got to have a look at this. It's like, yeah, right, okay. So if somebody shows me something that is absolutely relevant to what I need, fine. If it takes me a little while to work it out, they might need to kind of convince me a bit. So giving me something that's kind of easy to access, is supported by things that are going to be useful to me. So easy to adapt to my subject area, a template that, oh, I do love a template. Sharing learner feedback. If I know that this works for the learners, I'm going to be much more interested in it. And the fact that there's evidence of improvement, I'm going to be, oh, okay, so I really should be paying attention to this. So I think that's one of the key things in there about, if you're trying to support members of your team to embed the maths and English in their vocational areas, you need to make it as easy as possible. And the other thing that certainly I found, particularly in the online environment, is bite-sized chunks are making a huge difference. So try not to go in with, this is a war and peace kind of novel here, but do it as quickly and simply as possible. So yeah, make it as easy as you can for people. And if your apprentices are going to be working remotely for some time, and obviously we've all adapted our ways of working, it's just useful sometimes to have a little bit of a check on whether you've thought through all the things that might be affecting them. And this comes from a Future Learn course, which I did right at the beginning of lockdown. And I have to say it's really useful. And just the summary from it to know your apprentices, really know your learners, and think about the physical setting they might be in when they're working from home and learning from home. Is it actually appropriate? Do they have the right devices or connectivity? I mean, are they working off a phone, which can be really difficult? And are they digitally literate? Because we found that one of the biggest problems was people just did not know how to learn online, because why would they? Their jobs had never asked them to before. And how adept are they at things like time management, personal planning, and autonomy? So if you're used to being in a workplace where you're told what time to do something and where to go and what to do with the resource, and suddenly you're at home and having to sort it out for yourself, that's a whole different skill set. And obviously there's the physical space can be hugely problematic. If people are in very small spaces and might have to be doing their learning while perched on the edge of a bed or in the corner of a room with the children trying to also do their learning, this actually will impact on their mental and emotional health as well. So this is something for us all to be aware of when we're trying to encourage our learners to work from home. So you can click on the link for Future Learn and have a look at that program if it's useful to you. Jenny, anything you want to add in there?
Yes, just a couple of things. Right at the beginning of lockdown, I attended a webinar by SDN. They also run interesting webinars, and this one was about effectively engaging young people using online technologies. I know a lot of students and apprentices are back in organizations now, but here's just some of the tips I picked up. To lower the amount of time on online activities, as they are less likely to engage for the length of a normal lesson. Engage with individuals as well as with the whole group. Clarify behavior expectations. This is really important, such as remaining online for the whole activity and any follow-up required. So you should model the behavior you want to see from them. And also, this is really important, I think, if people are working from home, is to ensure that they know it's a safe place. Still think about your safeguarding issues. A friend of mine works at Milton Keynes College, and she has most of the apprentices and students are gradually filtering back now, but the college tutors are still delivering lessons on Microsoft Teams, which are both live and recorded. And the interesting thing about that is that each lesson still has learning support assistants in attendance for maths and English. So I think that's quite important, that that support for learning is still there. I think that's all, Bev.
Thank you. Okay, so we've given you a lot of information and a lot of links so far. We're going to give you some more in a moment. There's one thing I'd like you to do is just have a think for a moment what you're going to do next, because we all do this. We go on training courses, we go on webinars, and then we go, thank you very much, and go straight back to work and don't apply any of it. So whilst Mike is going through some resources, it would be really useful if you could just make a note for yourself what you're actually going to do as a result of today. And that could be look at some resources, it could be call a team meeting, it could be whatever it is that's appropriate for you. So think about, how am I going to apply my learning from today, while Mike just takes you through some of the additional resources that we think would be useful to you. Mike.
Hello again. You may not be aware, but there are 4 modules associated with this series of webinars. They're freely available still on Foundation Online. You do need to have a login, which is different to the booking system, but they take about half an hour each, and they're interactive with animations and so on, and well worth taking a look. Unfortunately, the webinars themselves now, this is the last one, but webinars, other webinars are available through the ETF booking system. ETF do have quite a range of professional development pathways. Again, take a look. You can work your way through webinars and other kind of interactive sessions across quite a range of subjects, many of which are relevant to embedding maths and English. We put together a few links there connected with the working from home. So if you want to keep up to date or find more tips about working online, please do. One of the things that came up was people's confidence in delivering maths and English themselves. And there are lots of evaluation tools that Jenny mentioned. Also, it's worth saying that the regional specialist leads are there to help and support you. They might be able to put you in touch with someone else locally, or keep you abreast of local events that can support you. So please do take a look. That's all. Thank you.
Well, I think Mike's given us quite enough bedtime reading. So thank you, Mike. There's a lot of resources there. So please do take the time to have a look at them. And we really hope that you've learned some more about embedding maths and English into authentic workplace practice and enhancing the provider-employer relationships and communication. So if you can, think about at least one, but if even better, 3 actions that you're going to implement from today, and take them away and do them. You'll receive an email via the booking system with a link to Padlet from today, and you'll get everything like the poll results and the slides. If you don't want your comments from the chat to be included, please do send a message to us now to say, please don't include my chat. And you'll get a survey as well. And even though this is our last one, we're a little bit tearful today. This is our last one of our webinars. We're hoping that if you fill in the survey, it will give ETF ideas and feedback for anything else they may want to offer in the future. And you'll also get a kind of certificate of attendance will come out to you as well. So everything from today will come your way via the Padlet. Please do stay safe and well, and hopefully, you know, summer's on its way and things might be brightening up a little bit. Thank you so much for your time today and for being on our last webinar of this programme. And hopefully we will see you at some event somewhere in the future. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.